Hello, my name is Patrick Marks, and I wanted to go over today a few things that I am looking at for my dissertation. One of the areas that is most explored in history is the American Civil War, primarily because of the tumultuous nature of the war and how it has been an identifying piece of American identity, and so it's one of the reasons that it's most explored. However, most of the scholarly work has been focused primarily on the political outcomes, the military strategies of certain commanders, and the economic outcomes from that war. Of course, we know that the war was fought over the issue of slavery in the 1860s, and it was set off after the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860. That war would last several years and cause the death of over 600,000 Americans, both Confederate and Union. One of the areas that I am most intrigued by is not just the military decisions that men made at these different battles, but why they made them. Much of the area of scholarship that I have been looking at has been dissecting the specific decisions from a military standpoint or even a political standpoint. To give you an example, one of the most fateful decisions ever made during the war was at the Battle of Gettysburg. On July 3rd, after the Army of Northern Virginia had been defeated by General Meade and the Army of the Potomac, there was a fateful decision that needed to be made. As Lee's army retreated and they waited for the Potomac River to lessen so they could ford across it, Meade was given a golden opportunity to attack and defeat finally the battered army of the Northern Virginia. And yet he did not do this. He instead allowed Lee to escape. Or did he? This decision would haunt Meade for the rest of his career, and in fact there has been many critiques of Meade's decision there. However, in recent years there has been a more influx of those who support Meade's decision. For instance, Kent Masterson and his book, Meade at Gettysburg, A Study of Command, clearly states that Meade's decision was one of the most right decisions militarily, but also in another way. The area that I want to focus for my dissertation specifically is the impact of natural law in the military leadership during the Civil War. Natural law is something that has been around for a long time. It's a biblical principle found in Romans 1, and it was expounded upon by Thomas Aquinas in the 12th century, that specifically talks about the innate knowledge of men knowing between good and evil, and that is built into us by our divine creator. So it's the divine law. Thomas Aquinas actually said that those that participate in natural law are actually participating in the eternal law, the law of God. And so the decisions that Meade made and others represent an adherence to the pillars of natural law, the sanctity of life, the preservation of life, and the empathetic nature. And so Meade's decision may have been more of an adherence to natural law based on his Episcopalian belief. And others present this as well, and this is the area I want to explore. Natural law is more than just military, more than political, and more than economic. It's also a civilization promoting value. And we can see this by when we look at others who don't adhere to natural law, especially modern examples. If we look at Adolf Hitler's German war machine, when he invaded in Poland in 1939, you could clearly see that there was a difference in that war than there was during the war of the American Civil War, which was over slavery. Now, there are other examples like Stalin as well. Stalin's iron grip was definitely not adherent to natural law. The concept of victory over virtue is very apparent in both of their leadership styles. So both Adolf Hitler and Stalin both had that ideology, but others have as well. Mao, for instance, in China, during communist China. We have Mussolini. All four of these leaders represent an antithesis against natural law. It's more about power. It's more about victory over virtue. Now that concept, for victory over virtue, is actually from Marcus Aurelius, which was, during the Roman Empire. And he made it plain that victory is not always a good thing if it's virtuous or if it's not virtuous. And so that's kind of where the concept of natural law really starts fitting into this specifically. And so when I go through this, I'm really excited to look at the impact of natural law of the military leadership of these men in the Civil War and how much that impacted them both during the war but also after the war. One of my favorite examples is Captain Robert Smalls. Robert Smalls' story is fantastic. He was a former slave who broke out of slavery and took over the ship, the USS Planter, or at the time it was the CSS Planter. It was a Confederate ship. He sailed it up to the Union and said, "Here you go." And when they saw that what he was good at what he did, they said, "Let's make you a United States Navy captain." And he spent his years in the war fighting for his freedom, and then after that, he became the first South Carolina House of Representative who was black. It was quite the story, but it didn't stop there. You see, he decided to buy his former master's home, and then when his former master's wife, who was destitute and ill, he took her in, and she lived with the Smalls for the remainder of her life. Now, why would someone do that? Someone who was a former slave, in fact, took in their former masters. Again, this implicates a adherence to natural law, and as it turns out, Robert was part of the African Baptist Church. So these are some of the areas that I'd like to explore for my dissertation, and these are some of the gaps that I'd like to fill and see if I can answer. Thank you.